Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So what I've done.
Hey, Barb, good to see you. All right. Welcome. We are live. We are online. And we're here. We have right now about 10 people watching online. There will be more. Barbara is online right now. You want to say hello to Barb? Hi, Barb.
Hi, Barb.
And Bill is going to be online. Bill just got out of the hospital. He had back surgery, and he's feeling better, but he's feeling worse. So he thinks that the surgery was successful, but his recuperation is going to take at least a month. So it'll be a while, maybe 2 months, before we see Bill again. But he's here with us tonight. We've got a group of people watching us from literally all over the world. Naresh is here. Naresh is in Sri Lanka. He's a young man who has been helping me with my YouTube channel for better than a year now. It's been about 14 months that he's been working with me. I think Mary Page is here or will be here shortly. Mary Page is in Kentucky, in the middle of Kentucky, in the bluegrass area, and lots of other folks. Ian was asking, I think, can you see? Yeah. One of the people was asking about being able to participate in the auction as a non-member. Anyone who wants to participate in the auction is welcome to do so. At the end of the evening, just pay your $12 membership dues and you'll be good to go. Well, we decided we're going to kick off things early because the last 2 months we've had over 100 items in our auction. We don't have anything comparable to that tonight, so we're going to make a lot of money tonight because I'm not going to let anything go for less than $10 a piece. I won't hurt you too bad. One of the people who has been active in our club and active in clubs on the East Coast at least for years and years is John Patterson. John's with us tonight. He's a remarkable man who's traveled extensively, collected extensively. If you saw the newsletter, you saw a picture he took of me when we were out collecting up at Big Pass in the rain, in 5 feet of water out in the middle of the Gulf, virtually. We were right at the bridge going over to Longboat Key, collecting pygmy seahorses and whatever else we could get. I have a story I need to tell. I went back to that place where we were. Remember where we were collecting? If you head straight to shore, there's a, what's it called, a dip.
Yeah, where the
A
buses are
swale. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, straight on.
Okay.
Straight on the shore, not at the wall. There's a swale, a deep one. I was out there last fall with Frank, who will be, Frank's online tonight too. And I got worn out because we were pushing through the grass flats. And I decided to make a beeline straight for shore. Well, like I said, there's a swell there. I had my net, which is about a 6-foot pole, and I held it in the water like this and couldn't touch bottom. I was swimming. So I was in at least 8, 9, maybe 10 feet of water. I got totally worn out. It was much further than I thought it would be. I had to flip over on my back and paddle to shore. At the shore, at the end of the water, there's an immediate drop. So you don't go out 12 inches before you're in. So I had to swim all the way to shore to be able to get out of it. That was pretty harrowing because I'm not real strong anymore, but I managed to do it and I got there. And then we went back up to the van, and there standing waiting for us was a state cop of what's it called? The
Fish and Wildlife.
Fish and Wildlife. The Fish and Wildlife guy was there. And he wanted to know what we were doing. And fortunately, we didn't get anything we were looking for. All we managed to come back with was a bunch of macroalgae, which were very nice macroalgae. So he was a little disappointed and made sure to inform us that we needed to be extremely careful about collecting CITES animals like seahorses and pipefish. So he let us go. So it was a harrowing day. But that was the same spot we went to.
Yeah, the macroalgae there are wonderful.
Oh, they really are. 3 or 4 years ago I was there.
Yes.
So without further ado, let me introduce John to you. John Patterson.
Oh, here, hang me a laptop. I'll run the controls from up.
Oh, all right. Let me use here.
You want to flip it over to the...
Yes, I'll do that right.
For those that don't know me, I've been part of working with this club pretty much since its inception.
I think so.
Yeah. Unfortunately, most of the guys in the club that I've been collecting with didn't show up tonight. I don't see LaBello here. William couldn't make it. I know I've been out with Lou. Chip, I don't know if have we been out?
We just did Oscar Shear Lake one time.
Yeah. So we haven't had the good chance to get in the mud. But I gave a talk to this club 4 or 5 years ago. It was a talk collecting in Uruguay. And it was based around taking a friend of mine, Scott Arney, who after he had severe complications from diabetes, was virtually blind, could barely walk. And we took him on a 10-day trip into Uruguay and the hills of Uruguay because he wanted to go collecting again. So you'll see a couple pictures of him from before he got like that, kind of do that. He since passed away, but just to show that kind of anybody can go collecting. And I know Chuck's really wanting me to do collecting talks just in general about different places, but Lou wants me to do how to collect and teach people because he wants more people in the swamps with him to catch stuff.
Great.
So I did a little bit of collecting. So I did a kind of a montage of all the different places, not all, but a lot of different places I've been, with some of the different things I've seen, and just kind of the basics of, if you're thinking about collecting, kind of what you need to go over. Yes, sir. You need to make a full screen up there.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, I'll try. I did that before.
There you go.
Thank you.
So, collecting around the world, how not to die in nature. These are the places I've collected at. I got little black arrows. In the U.S., I've done North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Tennessee, Maryland, Georgia, Ohio, Alabama, Mississippi, Texas, Kentucky, California, Oregon, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, and Florida. When I say collecting, I mean that I had an actual net bag and gear in my suitcase when I went. Not the random stuff that I do where I was in the Dominican Republic and I took my shirt off and ran it through the ditch to catch the lingus. My wife was not happy with that. As far as countries, I've gone collecting in Mexico, Belize, Honduras, Costa Rica, Panama, Chile, Brazil, Argentina, Peru, Colombia, and Uruguay legally.
Uruguay legally
Absolutely.
and none of the others.
No, all legally.
Oh,
All of them legally.
all right.
This is where I have left either entered with permits or exited with permits and fish alive reported. So that's why these are the countries listed. But yeah, so mostly Central South American. I'm a small fish guy. All right, those that know me know that I've bred dozens and dozens and dozens of species of lepistos. I'm into tetras, live bears, mainly saltwater. About as big as fish I generally mess with is a discus or angel. I've got some ultims I've been working with. They've been breeding age now for about 2 years. I've got them wiggling and I've gotten to hybridize with regular angels, but still can't get the true ultims to breed despite a couple of different things that I've been trying. So that's what I'm actively working on. That's kind of what I do. I work with a few different fish farmers. I've got stuff in some ponds that they're raising and they sell. I got a few tanks at the house, and then I pretty much have moved to the kiddie pool method where I've got 3-foot pools all in the backyard with key species being raised in each one. So that's why when people ask me for fish, I'm like, no, because I really don't feel like climbing inside of a 3-foot pool to go catch you a little 2-inch fish. Why do you want to go collect? For everybody, that's a real personal question. Some people like to go get rare and exotic fish. I have had people beg me to take them to the spot where I catch these fish. And then when I explain to them the cost of going on an actual collecting trip, this fish comes from the border of Argentina, Uruguay, and Brazil. That's where this fish comes from, Bella Union, Uruguay. So round trip airfare is approximately $800. Your Fish and Wildlife permits, your inspection permits to bring fish back into the United States will run you $150 for the inspection, depending on the port you come back into, and you have to fly back into the correct airport for that. Now, that does not include the fact that this is a 6-hour drive from the nearest airport. So you land, you have to rent a car. It's a 2-day drive, two-day drive to get to the spot. So you're going to need lodging for 2 days. You're going to need a local driver and a guide. So typically when we go down, it's a $12,000 to $15,000 trip for 4 to 6 of us to get them. So when I explain that out to people, they're like, oh, Ken's breeding them in Georgia? Yeah, just have him send me a pair for $30. That makes a lot more sense now. Ken Davis is the main breeder of these now in the States. He's the one that we give most of our stuff to out of southern South America and Uruguay, just because he's got the vats and he has the right climate. So he can breed most of the stuff outdoor year round. But why do you want to go collect? You want to get something neat or cool? Are you the bird guy? We took a grad student one of our trips. He was out every morning at 6 a.m. taking pictures of everything but fish. You know, he was sitting there taking every bird, every snake, everything. So are you into nature? Is that what you're wanting to do? Are you out there to be the nature buff? And that's completely fine. I can tell you, I've been on collecting trips where some people don't even ever look at the water. They're spending more time flicking rocks for scorpions, or snakes, or they're out trying to get birds. So you got to think about what is it you're there. But more importantly, remember, be respectful of the fact that you are outdoors and you need to take into that consideration wherever you're going, whether you're going down the street with Lou or going to another country, it doesn't matter. Or you're just doing it with friends. This right here is a trip I did. On my left of the photo, that's Scarani. There's me, Ken Davis, Alejandro. Now he's Dr. Alejandro. And then I've got, some of you all may know Bob, Sickle Bob, used to be out of Denver. Now he lives up in, I think he's up in Largo now. He retired to Florida. And then a couple of grad students we had helping us out collecting. This right here is taking it in a Brazilian steakhouse in Brazil. So for those of you that go pay that $80 a person for them to bring the meat and slice it off, well, this is what it is in Brazil. Same concept, except they have a TV on the back wall running for the kids to watch, and it's more like how we would treat a Golden Corral. But a lot of people like to go collecting just to go hang out, right? We all have our fishing stories to go hang out with our buds and go fishing. Same thing. A lot of times I've had people go with me to South America to go collecting and not bring a fish back. I got a good friend of mine. He lives in Iceland, Gummendorf. He will fly down, meet us in South America. He'll go collecting and then fly back and not take a fish. He's flown to the States. We've taken him around here collecting. You know, he just likes getting out and hanging out. So you got to think about why you want to go collecting. What's the purpose? For me, honestly, I'm big about trying to understand why is that fish there? Because we all keep different fish. We all we research our fish. We get very generic information. Oh, this fish comes out of this river or this pond or this lake system, and this is the water conditions, and this is your average temperature, and yada, 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 which is all great information. But that doesn't tell us anything about where that fish actually fits into its ecosystem and its habitat. And that's really, when I go collecting, what I'm looking for. When me and Lou talk about stuff, he'll tell you, I'm always asking about, well, was it in this spot? Was it sunny? Was it shady? Was the plant? How was the water flow? Because I'm trying to figure out why were you catching that there. And that's the reason why I go collecting, is to learn better how stuff works and why is it where it is. Because if you go read a random report on a river system, they'll tell you, like if you go read this little creek here, I bet you if you look at the collection report for this thing, it'll tell you they got bass, they got bluegill, they got, I know when I went out here and looked, I saw where the plateaus have dug into the shoreline. You had melanistic ambusia, you have mollies out here. But you'll get all this stuff listed on one sheet of paper as these are the species here, but they're not going to tell you that, well, you're going to catch the ambusia up here in the little hollow in front of where the kayaks are. Well, why are they there as opposed to out in the main channel? You know, so when you're going to set up your water system and set up your tank, you'll see stuff that says, hey, this is a species list. This stuff goes together, but when you put it together, it really doesn't. So that's personally why I go collecting, is to kind of figure that stuff out and learn. I actually cleaned my car out and unloaded it because I thought I was going to pick William up. This is what I keep in my car for collecting. I have 3 pieces to my net, so it attaches down. That's the one I generally put in my suitcase. I've got spare net heads. I have the black handle net, the black mesh net. That's what I let other people use. If somebody else wants to grab a net, I never let them use my net, because never let anybody use your net. They'll break it. And nets are expensive and hard to get if you have a good net. That's a $30 net from Bass Pro Shop. Works great if you've got a friend with you. I also keep a seine in my car. So normally speaking, that's why when somebody had a leaky bag, I'm like, oh, I have fish bags in my car. But that's a pair of water shoes, and I always have a random plastic cup in my car. You always need a random plastic cup because you need something to put fish in. But that's the basic collecting gear. If you just want to be a hobbyist collector and travel around, that's the basic stuff I keep in my car. Other things you need for like a day trip, you need your fishing license. You need to understand the regulations of where you are and what you can and cannot collect. Like Lou said, you never know when they're going to be waiting for you next to the car. You want to make sure all your documentation is in check. A bucket with a lid is nice. Air pump, some bags, a small shovel or spade, especially if you're into plants. You'll never know when you're going to see something weird or neat growing. You may be able to get a sample of it. Aquarium salt. Polarized sunglasses are a key thing. They'll cut the reflection down on top of the water, check to see what you're getting. A hat for sun, and especially in Florida, you need a spot. Do not go out in these swamps by yourself. Period.
Amen.
The fish behind there is Elisoma evergladi. That should be a female. By the way, if you look, that's actually the net mesh. That's how small of a mesh that I use to collect those. That's another thing, is if you're going out and targeting a specific species, you need to keep that in mind. I know when me and Labella went up to the Panhandle to catch some Gilberti, Elisoma Gilberti, another one you'll see a picture of him. He brought his regular net, and we're sitting there working the spot where they actually describe the species from. I'm scooping a net with this fine mesh like this, and I'm getting 5, 6 a scoop. He's got regular, that regular 1/4-inch mesh, and he's getting none, 1, none. So I'm sitting there.
That fish is 1/2 inch long.
Yeah, that fish there is 1/2 inch, 3/4. I mean, you can see the little plant matter next to it. But yeah, so that's the basic equipment that you need for a day trip. If you're going on a little bit for an extended trip, especially out of the country, you need to get your permits. You need to check with the country going into if they require any permits to get fish, to first collect fish in their country, You need to check to see if they have any permit requirements for exiting the country. A lot of countries now are requiring a vet cert to leave. And then also when you get back to the States, you need to report it to Fish and Wildlife that you're bringing fish in and schedule your inspection when you hit the border. I cannot emphasize that enough, because if you hit the border and you don't have that stuff and you have fish, you will not have fish. You will get a bill when you try to come in, even if they're in your suitcase. We dealt with it. Somebody asked me about the Guppy Convention. We dealt with it with the Guppy Convention. People trying to bring in fish that didn't tell us ahead of time they were bringing for us to get cleared, and it was a nightmare for them getting fish into the show. If it had been something other than a guppy, anything that resembled a wild fish, they would not have gotten in. A couple of the people. This is actually, the picture here is actually the hardest fish to catch when you go collecting in the Amazon. It's a neon tetra. This is a fish that is abundant and they catch by the thousands during the rainy season. But you can't go collecting in the Amazon in the rainy season, because where you need the collecting is up there. The water table will be 10, 20 feet deep. This fish here, when you're trying to catch these as a hobbyist, is brutal. This was our target fish on one trip, and we got 8 with 6 people collecting for 7 days. And 4 of them were caught by a little kid that was there. Yeah. Antibiotics. I don't see Doc in the room. I get a I generally will prophylactically take generally doxycycline, 100 milligrams twice a day, as well as getting my malaria shot, dengue, and yellow fever shot. You get cuts, scrapes, and bruises. You're in a foreign area. If you're in a place where it's generally recommended not to drink the water, remember, you're getting in the water. You're going to get wet. If there is something there, you're going to get exposed to it. So I generally will preemptively take a wide-spectrum antibiotic at low dose, just in case I do get exposed to anything. It tends to keep it at bay. The actual risk of malaria in most collecting is actually very low. Malaria is where people are. Generally, when there's a whole high concentration of people, you don't have a high concentration of fish. So they tend not to go hand in hand, but generally you have to go through heavily populated areas at some point to enter and exit the country. So I'm not ever overly worried about getting malaria, but the couple of people I know that have had it in their lives, it is not something that you ever want to go through. And most importantly, you need to bring candy and cash. Literally, this right here, this little scene here is probably an hour and a half by speedboat from Iquitos, Peru, which is they call it their jungle capital. We pull up to a village, all the kids run up. You give them candy and nets, and they will go catch all the fish you want. What I think is hilarious is if you look, the guy in the green shorts is barefoot. The other guy in the green shorts is actually carrying his shoes so they don't get wet. So they're all running around in this completely barefoot, pulling nets and whatnot. Now, this is before we got all the kids in the water. Can you make it full screen somehow? It's flipped over again. So if you look at it, we've got this right here is a relatively narrow patch of water. It's probably 12 feet across. It's got some more or less growing on it. Very low flow down the middle, right? We caught 6 different species of cory in this. We caught 2 different pygmy species. You notice type, and then a couple others. And honestly, depending on how you swung your net, determined what type of fish you caught. So if you came with an overhead and drug toward you, you got one species. If you put the net on the bottom and pushed it away, you got a different species. If you came up into shore, up under the plants, you got a different species. Literally, there would be feet separating completely different species, and you would not even know it if you didn't try all these methods. That's one of the reasons why you want to get a group going. If you go to the same spot time and time again and you do the same thing, you're going to get the same results. But you get different people using different methods trying to catch stuff, you will get different stuff. And we found a few new species or expanded the ranges of species by just having groups out there. I'll point out what the kids are wearing. This is what I typically, those that go collecting with, this is basically what I wear before I go jump in. I'll throw the water shoes in the car. I'll have a bathing suit on and a t-shirt. When I go down to South America, I've got a hat on, old t-shirt. Those are like the water pants and stuff that you can buy at Bass Pro Shop. And those are dive boots with the grip on the bottom. And the reason for that is like you said, everything down there is trying to kill you. Every plant is going to cut you and stick into you and try to make you bleed. If you feel like you're about to fall down, don't reach out and grab something. You will come back with holes in your hands. Ants are everywhere. This right here was we were walking at night. Somebody bumped a branch, and this fell down, and we took our lights and shined it up, and these ants just were pouring out of a hole in a branch. Ants are everywhere. There are hundreds of species of ants in little square kilometer spaces that they've studied. They all bite. They all bite. This is why you always wear long pants, even if it's 99% humidity, 99 degrees. This right here is actually the last gator that charged me down in the Glades. I think it was last March. I go down to Miami a couple times a year. Went down Tamiami Trail. This is actually that big ditch next to the trail. It had dried up completely and was puddled. And I was, of course, stopping each puddle trying to catch stuff. Here's one that where stuff wasn't dead, and this guy popped up 30 feet away and swam right toward me, and then he charged out of the water at me. I ran up and got back up on the bank before I took the picture. That's where I took the picture from. That's why it's important to always have a spotter, because you never know when one's going to pop up and around you. My wife hates it because I'll sit there and be walking around, and she's like, I can't see you anymore. And I'm like, don't worry about seeing me. You need to be keeping an eye on, in this case, where the gator is, so that I know where it is. Because if you're sitting there, you scoop that net, and you're doing this, you're not watching anything around you. You don't see the snake swimming over. You don't see the gator coming at you. You don't see the caiman coming. Okay? You don't see the anaconda behind you. You don't see any of it. All you see is the little thing flipping your net that you're trying to get to. Oh, this came out of my shoe. Yeah, so obviously, I use the dive boots, unzip them, I throw them outside to dry out overnight. And this guy crawled into my shoe. And in the morning, yes, I shook my shoe, but he didn't come out. So I put the dive boot back on, which if you've never worn a dive ring, it's just a neoprene, very tight. Put it in, put it on, zipped it up. 6 hours later, when I took my shoe off, he popped out still alive. I had felt something stabbing me in my toe all morning. Right? And I'm like, and finally got to the point where I need to take this off. And if he wasn't biting me, it was just the hairs of his legs sticking in me. Right? But there are spiders. Yeah, and he did not. He just dropped and ran off. Who wants to go collecting? I see some ladies back there that. No?
That looks like a wandering spider, which is very bad news. The fact that it was in your shoe for any length of time.
Yeah, no, it was great. Yeah, no, my wife doesn't know about this one. This is my friend Scott. He decided to do something really dumb. He was trying to open this mouth to show the picture of the teeth. This is a Poplia macularis, a brown wolffish, and it decided to nip the end of his finger off. This fish right here is only about 12 inches long. What's bad about these? Oh, that got out of order. That comes out of this location. That fish is in water that's less than 4 inches deep, and it's just sitting there. For those that are in the native stuff, have you ever heard of a bowfin? This fills that exact same niche in the habitat as a bowfin. So it'll lay up on shore in inches of water, waiting for something to come by and ambush it. Okay, but this thing has a mouth full of razor sharp teeth. Here's the problem with that. This spot here is the ideal, pristine location for catching apistos. For those of you that ever care about where apistos come from, this is it. That's what it looks like. That water right there is about 2 feet deep on the deep end. It's got a bank wallow leaf litter. This particular one has notice types that are using the leaf litter like hotels, and you'll have a male breeding with multiple females. But this little hole's here where I go to catch apistos. However, I actually caught these in there. Now, does anybody here actually know what this fish is?
Yeah, I see him on the list.
You see it? No, you don't. Stop. So, me and Scott, okay, I'm in apisto mode. I'm looking at the habitat. I'm like, man, there's got to be apistos here. I catch this thing. It's hard to see, but it's actually the really big mouth that opens up to look kind of like an apisto mouth. I'm like, I don't know, this is weird. So I drop him in my bucket. We get back. This is in the Amazon, so we're on a river boat. Get back to the boat. We're putting him in display tanks to try to figure it out. We looked at this thing for days, each night trying to figure out what it was, until we finally noticed one thing. Look right on top of the base of the tail. See that little fin there? That's an adipose fin. It's not even a cichlid. That's a tetra. It's a Weissmanni. That's a black darter tetra or black morpho tetra. I'd never seen one before. For those that don't know, that's a sexually dimorphic cave-spawning tetra. It literally spawns just like an apisto. It spawns a pH 5 water, right? Apparently, you know, I was talking to some old guys. Apparently, back in the 50s and 40s, this was a popular fish in the trade because that fin on the male when he gets breeding will actually get very long, kind of like the wealthy eye shiner we get up in the panhandle. Never seen it before. So that's what you actually get when you go out and collect, is you get surprised. You look at a habitat and say, oh, this is perfect for this. This is what I should catch. Get out there and work. I'm like, what is this? And it's something that's supposed to be there. You just didn't think about it. That's why it's sometimes a good thing and a bad thing to have in your mind what you want to catch. I read that a lot as people says, oh, I'm going to catch this. I'm going to catch this. They see a bunch of cool stuff that they completely ignore because they're so focused on one thing. And then 3 days later, like, man, I should have got some of those. It'd been really cool to have some of those Genencia or having some of those cichlids. This right here got out of order. This is why you wear pants. This is mine. We were in Uruguay. We were in a cleared grassed area. We were supposed to be working the Encina River. It was flooded. The shore was flooded about 30 feet from where it normally is. So we had to go, we went in a little bit and worked feeder creeks trying to get stuff. Specifically, we were looking for the target species for that location, the pike cichlid. It's a Scotty eye, but it's got a nice bright red stripe in its dorsal fin. Really pretty fish. It's traditionally caught with a hook and line. So we pulled up to next to a cow pasture that had a creek running through it. We parked up on the bridge, and the guys were fishing off the bridge. Me not being a cichlid guy, me not being a big cichlid guy, pike guy, I run down in the weeds and start catching, nuking around, see what I can find. And I get eat up with leeches. This right here is from pulling the leeches off of what's left over. But because we did that, we found this fish, which is an undescribed species. Lou, you got small again. It's got meat, yeah. This is an undescribed species of Cyclosoma. So within the country, there are Dimeris. So when I first caught it, I thought it was a Dimeris. And our guide for the trip was Felipe. Really smart guy. He knew everything about all the fish in his country. Actually, me and him had a conversation the other day about how I didn't know every fish in my country. And I'm like, well, Felipe, your country takes 3 days to drive across. My country takes weeks to drive across trying to collect everything. But anyway, we get there. I catch this fish. And I'm like, hey, is there Dimeris here? And he's like, no, we're in Chanchitos in this drainage. There's no Dimeris. Because down there, you either have a Chanchitos type or you have a Cyclosoma Dimeris type within the watershed. You generally don't get both. So like, okay. And I'm like, well, this looks like a weird one. So I kept them. And so then, you know, we're there about an hour and a half. The guys have caught their pikes. They're taking their pictures, backing everything up. And they call me back up from the weeds. And I go up there and I show the fish. And he starts swearing and saying, what the F is that? Yada, yada, yada. And everybody else looks. And now everybody else is down in the weeds trying to catch more because it's something that nobody knew what it was and nobody's seen before. Now this fish is trading in the hobby as Ruta 44. I don't know if you've heard of that one, but it's an undescribed Cyclosoma. The reason why it's called Route 44 is because the highway we caught it on was Route 44 in Uruguay. It was actually at kilometer marker 10. And yeah, it flipped again, Luke.
I'm doing it. It's okay. When you change the picture,
Is it when
I'll do it. I'll take care of it.
Okay.
Don't worry about it.
But yeah, so that's the good and the bad of going out and doing the oddball stuff and not doing what everybody else is doing. That's how you find new stuff, is just by going a little off board and finding stuff. This was not a mistake. This is what happens when you cut your flash off and take a picture at night in the Amazon. You are under a dense jungle canopy. There is no light. If your flashlight goes out, that is what you see. Black, utter nothingness. There are a few lizards down there. We have these in Florida now. This is a tegu. Okay. They don't get too terribly big, maybe 4 feet, but they're super aggressive. They will kill goats. They will kill baby cows. Whatever they can get their hands on, they will kill and eat. They don't mess with people too much, but that was our lunch, and he was trying to get our lunch off the grill. That is one important thing is when you go down, make sure your guide also knows how to cook, because your guide or driver may not get in the water with you. So while you're in the water working, if he can set up a small grill like that and grill your lunch while you're out in the river collecting, it's always a very good thing. And then of course the fish try to kill you. That's a piranha. I mean, I've honestly never been bitten by a piranha. I don't know anybody that's been bitten by a piranha.
What kind of piranha is that?
Silver.
Yeah, it's just a silver. So this is a piranha that if I released it in that creek would live year round. This is where I caught this fish. It snows. About once every 5 years or so, it'll snow here. So when when people wonder why can't we have da 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 da, it's because this is not a silver piranha. I guarantee you this is a different species. But nobody's bothered to work with them, actually key them out and define it as such. But this fish comes from the southern part of Uruguay, which if you look at how far south Uruguay is compared to North America, it'd be about the equivalent of Georgia. The big difference that they have in South America is we know we have the Gulf Stream that comes off of Africa and warms the eastern seaboard. They don't have that in South America. They have the opposite. It's the same stream, but it comes off the Antarctic. So it actually cools them down more. So the air here is a lot drier. We don't have 99% humidity when we're out collecting in the summer in Uruguay. It might be 70 or 80%. There'll be cactus growing, But yeah, so this is a fish that if it was released in Florida, would survive year round. If kombucha didn't kill it off first. Yeah, you laugh. There is some truth to that.
Nastiest fish.
There are snakes. This is a rare fang viper they call. Don't ask me what kind it is. I'm not touching it. I'm not scared of a snake. I have a very healthy respect for them, however. I'm the guy that when somebody yells snake, I stop, take a step back and say, where? But we always have people down there that when someone yells snake, they run to the person that yelled snake. So you will see snakes. I've actually never seen an anaconda or a boa in the wild. I have seen quite a few vipers, though. Mainly rear fang, which that basically means if they bite you, the odds of them injecting you with venom is very low. Not going to try to find out, but yeah, that's what they're doing is they're sticking stuff in the mouth, trying to pry it open to get the fangs to pop out. Not my Felipe Cantera, he ran the herpetology program at the state zoo. So he's always, any snake we'd find, we'd get out and run and chase it and try to figure it out. And then you have the heat. So this day here, it was 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Like I say, the humidity is like 70%. There are other pictures of me laying here flipping off the camera. I didn't put it in here because it's family friendly. But yeah, this right here is actually the Rio Uruguay. That in the background is Argentina. We're on the Uruguay side of the river. We'd stopped for lunch and to do water changes, and it was very hot, so I just went and laid down for a little bit. But
are those nests in there in that water?
So probably. You got to think we're there at the very end of the dry season is our goal. Specifically in November is when this trip is when we do this trip. So here from where this is about 15 feet below the high water mark. So to give you an idea of how far down it is, the water would normally be at the top of the rainy season 15 feet higher. What's interesting about here is we were again having our lunch next to the water. A lot of meat. Always eat a lot of meat on these things. But we noticed there were these little skull, and it was just a little silvery tetra. We didn't know anything about them. And we were sitting there watching them. We caught them, looked at them. But we drop a piece of bread, and the skull would eat it. But the bread would float down the river. And the skull would stop. And the bread would keep floating. But then another skull would come up and do it. And these skulls would never cross. We caught them both, and we looked at them, and we saw no difference between them. But clearly, they had their own little localized territory that they stayed in, which we measured out to be no more than about 15 or 20 feet. And yeah, we tried, we would run in and disturb them. We were doing all kinds of stuff. And the reason why we're taking these long breaks during the middle of the day is you have to change water. When you're out on a multi-day trip, or even on a long one-day trip, you have to change the water on the fish. And most of the time, if you have stuff that's important, or you're catching stuff away you have no way to get back to, you're individually bagging that fish. So when we go to Uruguay, the permit that we get approved for lets each person bring back approximately 120 fish. So for the most part, we are individually bagging 120 fish for each person. So if there's 8 of us, that's about 1,000 bags. And we're doing individual water changes on every one of those bags 3 times a day. That's what you have to do to keep the fish alive. Because again, you've got oxygen concerns, you've got disease crossover concerns. Because again, we're crossing in a day, we may go 2 or 3 different watersheds, right? So even though it's the same country, that doesn't mean that the diseases in one watershed or have been exposed to another watershed, or it might have variated to a point where, you know, it's more virulent in one or the other. So you really don't want to cross your watersheds if you can help it. Now, obviously, we are having to get water. Most of the time, we tried to get our water out of a well, but when we couldn't, would go out in the middle of the river, and you flip the bucket. You gently sink your bucket all the way down, and you scoop off the bottom and pull up to try to get the cold water. Because when we would check the water temperature at the top of the water, it would be over 100 degrees. So that's something else to consider when you go collecting, is the time of day you're collecting and what the conditions are. If you're in 74-degree water, which is most of our springs here put out around mid 70s, and you're taking a fish out of 74-degree water, and you're standing in 90-degree air, what are you doing to that fish? Think about if I just suddenly raised your body temperature about 24 degrees like that. How would that do to you? And then you're throwing it in your bucket, which is 80 degrees. Okay. So those are just some of the things to think about, is, you know, where is the fish at? If you've ever walked into a natural body of water, the top of the water is hot. You know, if you get 2-3 feet deep, you can feel that thermocline. You can feel the gradient in temperatures as you go. And the fish are fine swimming back and forth, but they know what they're doing. They're not getting forced to it. You know, just like, hey, we all know how to breathe, but if you suddenly get dunked in the water while you're trying to breathe, it doesn't work well for you. Kind of the same thing with fish. So you got to be cognizant of that when you're out collecting. It's just what's the condition where the fish is, and then what's the condition of where you're putting it in. If there's any essentials that you need in life, don't expect it to be when you get there. On this trip, we had a young grad student named Ed Burris. He's got his doctorate now. He actually wrote his thesis on Crennicicla celodoculus, which was a cichlid we discovered down there. But he is a Mountain Dew addict. I enjoy it myself. And we had a little group chat, and we messaged. It was his first trip. We messaged Philippe hey, you have Mountain Dew down there. And he didn't know what it was, so he thought we actually meant we had dew on the mountains. And he's like, well, it can in this time of year. Yeah, so no. So if there's anything you must have, bring it, because it will not be there. If you have a brand loyalty, if there is something you gotta have, bring it, and that includes toilet paper. At the beginning of your trip, you always want to do a nice group photo, because at the beginning of the trip, you all like each other. Nobody has stolen someone else's fish. Nobody's hidden something that somebody else has wanted. Nobody killed something. Nobody left something. This picture, there's me, obviously. That's my son, Scott, behind us. That's Felipe. That's Ben right before he went into the Army. And then that's Ed next to us. So this was, you always want to get that nice group shot at the beginning, because by the end, you may have people that do not like each other. But this is what half of our day is we're just sitting there opening each fish box, rebagging each fish, and putting it back. And we try to find a nice shady spot to do that. And what you'll find is as the trip progresses, you'll get the stops. And some people can't even collect because you have to change water on fish. Because as the bags get more and more as you collect, you get less and less time to actually fish because you have to take care of everything. This is the last picture that we did with Scott. This was after he had his episode. We literally were just driving around the country, and we were putting him in a chair wherever we went, giving him a pole, laying him fish. That's a pipe cichlid he's got there that he picked up. This is actually an open pit where they were mining amethyst. For those that don't know, a good chunk of your amethyst comes out of South America. This is the pit a lot of it comes out of down in Uruguay. I have some wonderful pieces that we found that we brought back. Interesting story. That is another brown wolffish. Wolffish are very common down in South America. That is in centimeters, not inches. So that thing's 43 centimeters long. What makes this fish interesting is Scott was sitting there trying to fish, and instead of going after the tetra tail that was on the hook under the bobber, the fish went after the bobber and swallowed the bobber. Yeah, so then we decided we needed the bobber back, so we had to actually go again and catch him and get him out with the bobber. But yeah, so those fish will eat anything, and they do have a mouth full of razor sharp teeth. You know, people talk about they went into the water and they got bit by a piranha. Nah, they probably got bit by one of these. Just like they say, you know, how many shark bites every year aren't really sharks? It's somebody swam into a school of blues or something else, and it ended up being something else other than a shark that bit them. So on this trip right here, actually, Labella was my spotter. That's me up in the panhandle in the swamp. That's where I was actually catching the Elisoma, the Gilberti there. But just to show you the size difference, the plant underneath it is an Acroterelidea. So that's approximately a 1/2 inch segment of plant with about a 3/4 inch to an inch long fish. That's Elisoma Gilberti. And again, you can see the size of the mesh of the net that I'm using. So the reason why you want to have multiple sizes of the mesh is it affects what you're able to catch. If I put a small mesh on my net, when it hits the water, so much drag is going that anything that's current loving or swim fast will just move out of the way immediately. So for those kind of fish, you need to have the larger the mesh that you can have, the quicker your net will move through the water, the easier it is to catch. But stuff like this that you're going for that's tiny, you got to have the small mesh for. So you got to have that balance in your repertoire of equipment to make sure you're able to catch what you're going after. I keep hitting the mouse. Ken loves this picture. In his talks, he shows this as this picture of him walking on water. What's actually happened here is he's walked out there and thrown the cast net, and they got stuck, and he's trying to get it unhooked. And he's calling me over to dive in the water to unhook the cast net. But this right here is another prime example of location where don't set your heart on a certain species or location. What you're seeing here is our prime location for collecting Celidoculus, which is the lip-spotted pike. It's not a dwarf pike. They get to about 7-8 inches, but it's a relatively new. At the time, it was an undescribed species. Actually, Burris actually got his doctorate describing the species, and a companion species. But to give you an idea, that was how this looked the time that we went there before. So where he's standing is that little greener right there. That's where Ken is standing in ankle deep water trying to unhook his cast net. Whereas as you can see, everybody is down in the water with poles trying to fish, and you see how far out Bob's waited. Again, we're standing in Uruguay. The other shore is actually Brazil. So this is on the Uruguayan Brazilian border. And this is again also in the region with the amethyst. So when the water is actually pretty clear here, you can actually see down and find amethyst in the river and pick it up as rocks as you're walking around. This is the target species, the lip-spotted pike. As you can see, it's got a black spot on its lip. Current loving, the reason why they're so difficult to catch is they're very shy in their habitat. They like to stay under the rocks. So you'll find a hole, you'll drop your bait in, and you have to catch every other fish out of that hole before this one will come out and bite the hook. So you got Scotty in the area. You have Minuano. These are all pikes. Minuano, Scotty Eye, and Celidoculus, and then you've got some Bahia, another another big pikes. So you'll find a hole probably about a little bit bigger around than where the table and chairs are, and it'll be a depression that's probably 3 feet deep. That'll be where they're at. They're in there breeding or in the structure, and you just have to fish it out. And you can actually look and see the fish, so you know when you got them all. And normally what we do is we wade in and we just start and we just work going downriver catching them all. Well, you can look out there and see that current going. Ain't nobody wading out there. That would be well over people's head. The water's all turbid and muddied up instead of being clear. And Ken's target species for this trip was Celidoculus. So needless to say, that's why he was out there waiting out, trying to find the edge to throw the cast net, was to hope and pray that he would get one in the cast net. He did not. And then that's me doing what I'm always doing, up in the weeds with my net. You can see there I have my spare bottle to put fish in. I typically try to collect based off the Gatorade method. What the Gatorade method is you buy a Gatorade bottle, you drink it because you need to get hydrated, and then whatever fish you catch, if it can't fit in the mouth of the Gatorade bottle, you probably don't need to bring it home. So typically for me, that's what it is I'll typically have like a wide mouth bottle, like the Gatorade bottles, with when I go collecting, and that way, because you can throw it in there, put the lid on, it can float beside you while you're collecting if you're waiting, walk around with it in your shore, they'll fit in your pocket. But as a general rule of thumb, if it doesn't fit in the mouth of the Gatorade bottle, I'm probably not going to be bringing it home for you. This is actually one of my favorite fish to catch. Does anybody know what this is?
Yes.
Yes.
Banded sunfish.
Okay, what river is it from?
Don't know.
You should know because this is the Miss Bar variety.
No, we're gonna go there.
Yes, this is out of the Santee River drainage. This is actually a North American native fish. It's technically in Florida. I have reports of a couple locations, but I haven't verified them myself. But they go from northern Florida all the way up the eastern seaboard. It's a broken population. It's not consistent. It's either a species of concern or protected in every state that it's found in. But this one right here comes out of the Santee River drainage. Is where this Miss Bar variety comes from. They get this is a dwarf sunfish, Enicanthus. This is Enicanthus catodon. They get about 3.5 inches big. They used to be in the hobby very prevalent before angelfish were in the hobby. And once angelfish came out, this became known as the poor man's angel. Low pH, readily will take live food and easy to turn to your frozen foods. Tend not to take prepared foods. But Chuck, you asked me some of my favorite. Where you catch these fish are some of my favorite places to go collect it. Its cousin, this is an Enicanthus gloriosus, also referred to as a blue spotted sunfish. This is another native fish. This one right here, I'll call it down in the glades. Again, goes up into the eastern seaboard, all of the state. This is a nice swampy water fish. Just like it's the main difference I find between the two is the black-banded sunfish tend to be in a little bit deeper water. I typically want to catch my black bands in 2.5 to 3 feet of water. These guys come right up into the shallows. So they'll be in the same water system, but they'll be a couple feet apart in the water system. But I do catch them from time to time together. Obviously, they do have. There is a third species of dwarf sunfish, and that's Obesus. I've only ever caught them a couple times, and they look like a washed out version of a blue spot with a little bit of boring in the background. Yes?
There's actually a population I found in New Jersey that the banded that's actually orange.
Yes.
So the fins and stuff are all bright neon orange.
Yes, but you can't collect them as protected.
Yeah, I had a permit.
Okay.
Question permit for those.
And yes, and so one of the things that you'll find, another reason about why to go collecting, you'll find color variations within a species. And even a species that's common in the hobby, collectors are lazy. They go to the easiest place that's closest to them to catch the fish to bring to the distributor, right? There's, I believe it was the Killie Club up in St. Pete. I forget the name of the Killie Club. One of them, they actually put out a paper just talking about bluefin killies and the color morph of the finnage as you move up the coast of the United States, where they go from almost a full yellow red to full blue, and you get everything in between. And literally, there are people that can identify the river that the bluefin killie came from just based off the color of the fins, as long as it's not been hybridized with another location. But you will get amazing color morphs in fish just by going to different locations. That's why I asked them about the black bands. I've caught enough black bands that generally speaking, let me go back to it. So this one has black front pectorals. There's a watershed where they have red lines in their front pectoral fins. There's other locations where the barring is slightly different. So if you learn your fish morphology, you actually tell the location it came from by looking at the fish, which is kind of interesting. It's actually catching the fish as they're speciating. That's a dova. We were down around a couple of fish farms in Homestead, and we were fishing the channels exiting the farm, and that's what we caught. Caught that on hook and line. That's down by Old World Exotics. If If y'all have ever been down there. Super great guys. As long as they know you're coming, they'll let you fish the canals around their property. But yeah, you don't want to go on there without them knowing. You can see their bats in the background. But yeah, you can literally catch all kinds of crazy stuff. That's Ben. He owns a bunch of pet lands up in Georgia. He comes down a couple times a year, and me and him will go collecting in South Florida. It's another find. So I've actually caught this fish in 2 countries. I've caught it in Belize, and I've caught it in the United States. This right here is your pike live bear, Belisonyx valencius. It's making its way up the eastern seaboard of Florida, and it's making its way up the Gulf side. They've been caught now as far north as Tampa Bay. It is a live bear. Looks like a gar. A lot of people look at it and say, "Oh, look at that small gar." I'm like, no, that's actually a pike. They're hyper aggressive. The females will eat the males if the tank's not big enough. The females will get almost 8 to 9 inches long. The males cap out about 5. So what ends up happening is once the females get big enough, they pretty much just all school themselves, and they will school, and then the males will break off and join with smaller females to do it. But yeah, once they get real big, it's very hard finding a male. Another common one that we'll get around here, self-in mollies. What's interesting about the mollies that you catch is you also get them like this. For those that have been doing a lot of work with the melanistic trait that's moving around the state, there are melanistic mollies. There's a killie that has a melanistic trait. Fundulus chrysotis, the golden ear or golden top minnow, depending on the column name, and then your Gambusia holbrooki. They're all generating a melanistic trait. There was UNCW put out a study about them decades ago, hypothesizing where it came from. On the Gambusia holbrooki, it's only expressed in males and it's a double recessive trait. What they're theorizing now that's happened in the Everglades is they believe that the melanistic trait has been transferred to other species via a virus. That's the current theory that they're researching, is that there's actually a virus moving around in the watershed, and it has copied the DNA of the melanistic trait from the Gambusia, and it is showing up being expressed in other fish at a higher than expected rate. With the Gambusia, it was something like 1 in every 1,000 it would occur, and now you're getting populations that breed almost true. Matter of fact, when I was walking the water out here before the thing, I saw 2 melanistic male Gambusia just in the creek right over here. But that's the current theory on those. And then this right here is the melanistic one we caught that was almost totally black. This is actually, I caught this one in the canals of St. Pete. If you drive around St. Petersburg, they'll have a ditch between the roads with about 2 inches of water. Yeah, that's what's. If you're ever wondering what's in the water, this is what's in the water. Anybody know what this is? Monosus akai. This is a green Otocinclus. Yes, very uncommon to find. We only have a small range where we consistently catch these. Mike Drawdy, he's gotten some of these, and hopefully he's going to try to breed them and get them going into the hobby. But it is a bright green Oto that breeds true. People for years said, "Oh, it's because of the food it eats. It's because of algae. It's because of this." When we went and caught these, we got 3 different species of Otos. This and 2 others. The other 2 are brown, and we brought samples back from all of them and gave them to people that were breeding them. And these did not hybridize with the browns. They only bred with themselves, and they all bred true. So there are people working with this right now, trying to get them a lot more prevalent and spreading around in the hobby. This we got technically in Argentina, but we got it entering from Uruguay. This is the rarest, ugliest, most common apisto that you'll get down in southern South America, Apisto combre. There is no such thing as a better photo of it. It's just an ugly brown little apisto. They never show any color. This is it. It's one of the few that they've not tried to domesticate in the hobby and breed out. remember, this is the fish that we caught the day where the top of the water was 100 degrees. So literally, we caught this fish in a foot of water, and when we stuck our temp probes in, it was 100 at the top. So this is probably where we caught it in the low to mid 90s. This is another fish that I get asked a lot to go and take people down to collect, the catfish people. It's an undescribed species of Ancestris, nice orange spots on the head. The males will get will get the trailers growing on the face. This is one that I enjoy catching. It's a Caricidium. It's kind of like a tetra. If you're into North American stuff, it fills the niche of a darter. So it likes a lot of flow, but it sits in the bottom. And it's almost like a little perch. It'll sit on its fins in the bottom of the water. And if stuff comes by, it'll hop up in the water column and eat it and drop back down and just kind of sit there. They get yellow, orange, or red fins of the 3 varieties I've seen, but not something that you see in the hobby very much. Not really tank friendly because it wants a flow. It wants a laminar flow in the tank, and it wants it in the bottom. So the only way to keep a fish like this, I use the same setup for these I use for zebra plecos, where you have a power head on one end, and then you have PVC pipe running down the bottom of the tank, so it's sucking in from the other side. So it's trying to get the power head to blow straight across and create a circle loop of your current. That's what I do for current loving fish. Is I use power heads, and then I'll attach PVC and run it down the bottom of the tank, so that I kind of get a one-way flow in the tank for the water flow.
5 more minutes, John.
Okay. Yes, dear. It's a Charax, nasty, ugly-looking territory. He swims with his head down. Beautiful golden body, red fins. This is another one that you see real common down in South America. This right here is actually showing the melanistic. So the bottom is melanistic gambusia. The top is a melanistic golden ear killie, chrysotis. These were caught down in, where was this caught? This was caught in Manatee River State Park. Knifefish, those of you that are into a little bit of oddball fish, knifefish can be very common to catch, but they're very difficult to get back. They don't like the handling. They don't like the sensitivity and trading. For those that are into plants, I mean, that's just a field of Amazon swords growing next to the creek. I mean, that's all flowering, all growing. They all grow out of the water, and the actual main channel doesn't. When it rains, the banks will flood, and they'll be full of water and fish. But this is their swords growing in the wild. This is another one of those Ancestris. Like I say, the orange spotted varieties, the spotting patterns are different in different river systems. A lot of people are in this catfish right now and get a lot of requests to go down and collect these. There's the male that we were talking about, and how they get the big claws on the side of the head. And again, this is as big as they get. They're beautiful Ancestris. One of my personal favorites, this is about as big a cichlid as I mess with down there. This is just a Dimeris. This comes out of Bella Union. I like it because it's got the nice silver body in it. There are 4 or 5 other color patterns of Dimeris that we get. This is the one that I enjoy. This is an Epistogramma. I even brought some for Doc. Which Episto is this?
I don't know. It's pretty.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's Epistogramma.
Wait a minute.
Drawing a blank. And then for the big guys, there's a big Vatata, pike cichlid. Catch those, huh? So again, another something. Any of these small tetras are super hard to find. In all my times in Uruguay, we have caught 5 of these. This is a bleeding heart tetra. Very hard to find during the dry season. We get tons of different Cory species. That gold green sheen, loses it in the aquarium. We brought him back a couple of different times. We cannot get that iridescent green to stay on the fish when it comes back. This is an undescribed species of Cory that we get. This is what one of the local fish market looks like. That's a big Tigrinus just sitting there chilling out. Other little random tetras. Sometimes if you're just looking for a sample or a specimen, hitting the fish market's the way to go. This is a very interesting location. This right here is actually a water buffalo hollow. This is an area, this is actually in the Amazon, but it's a very clay-filled area. So unlike a lot of the other areas, high mineral content in the water, this is the only place that we catch a Epistogrammoides, which is a almost like a dwarf or miniature apisto. So if you know how small apistos are, this gets half the size. We also catch these guys in there. Another pretty fish. You say I got 5 minutes. What's slide them wrong? Okay.
That was 5 minutes ago.
That was 5 minutes ago. So I can't talk about, I like hatchets or capinas or puffer fish or other knife fish or a pisto. This is cool. So this thing here is less than a 1/4 inch. We caught these in all the little creeks and ditches where we were catching apistos. I guarantee you this is their primary food source. I've tried to bring these back several times, can never do it. They're just a small micro little blue crayfish. More little notice type pistos that we catch. As you can see, I'm all into the ugly brown fish. Other little piranha that we catch, more pistos. When they feed you, just eat it. Don't ask what it is. For those that don't know, the meat in the brown gravy is capybara.
Fun.
Huh?
Thanks.
You're welcome. And as you're supposed to, every talk is with a sunset. So there's a sunset pic. That's from the farm down the road. Questions, comments, concerns?
How many
Yes.
times have you been down?
Huh?
How many times? How many trips?
To where?
Just in general, out of the country.
At one point I was on 4 or 5 a year.
Wow.
So I've been to Uruguay 9 times, Peru 6, and then Brazil 3, Venezuela twice, Colombia once. So and then Central America countless times.
What do you feed these fish? Either if you bring them from South America, what do you feed them? And if you catch fish up here, what do you feed them?
So the first thing I always try to feed is flake food and prey, but that doesn't tend to work. So I typically start with scuds, Daphnia moinia or magma, brine shrimp. So I'll find a live food that they'll work, and then I'll flip them over to a frozen food. So whatever live food I'm feeding, I'll start mixing in the frozen food. Most fish, once they get used to the feeding method, will then eat whatever's getting in there. And then I will slowly move them over try to move them over to prepared food if I can. Earthworm flake is a great one that I find a lot as an early adopter, especially for the apistos, if you can get it. Yes, Jim.
Where do you get your nets? What's a good net supplier?
Memphis Net and Twine. Memphis Net and Twine is where I get my seines. The dip net, the perfect dip net is a common one. That's put out by Venice Aquarium, but all he's doing is buying the parts from Memphis Net and Twine and assembling them together. My pole is an older pole that still uses the hexagon handle. Their modern net heads are circular. But for the black mesh nets, I just get those from Bass Pro Shop. They're $35 for the $35.99 for the standard, $39.99 for the telescopic. When somebody contacts me and says, "Hey, we want to go collecting," I'm like, "Great, go to Bass Pro Shop and get a net," because I don't want to. My nets are actually custom cut, the handles, so they will fit in my suitcase. So they are as long as my suitcase, so they will fit in there. I can put the net head and put a fish box in and zip it up, and everything fits. Because my wife loves that suitcase. Yes.
2 questions. One, do you have a favorite species that you collect, like in this area, Florida? And I think I just said earlier, do you have a specific favorite system, or like a personal?
So I really, let me think. I could see I do, and I'm drawing a blank on the scientific name. It's the blue one it's actually not an apisto. It is a dwarf cichlid. It comes out of the Venezuelan, Colombian border. Me and Ramsey have been breeding them for a few years now. Now it'll kill me. I can't remember the scientific name, but yeah, that's the dwarf that I tend to go after. As far as apisto, I tend to like the wild types. The man-made colors, I like the yellow, orange, gold cockatoides. So that would be a bright orange body or a bright yellow body with orange fins. It'll have a gold eye. Soars out of Oregon was breeding those for a while and distributing them really good. if you're talking about your man-mays. But I mean, yeah, I don't like them to get overly complicated. I mean, we all know they're temperature dependent, right? You know, depending on what temp you have, matter will determine your male female ratio. But some of them get really peculiar, and the main mistake I see people doing with the pistos is they put a light on their aquarium. If you got a fish that comes from dense leaf litter under a dark canopy, at noon it's like dusk is here.
Yeah.
So if you're putting that in a fully planted tank with bright lights on top of it, you're stressing your fish out. Notice in the shots where I'm catching the pistos, you didn't see a plant growing in the water at all. Not saying there are not pistos that will not live with plants, but those aren't the ones we have in the hobby. Most of what we have in the hobby come from, they're detritivores. They're actually spending most of their time sifting through the muck on the bottom, just picking up and spitting it out, trying to see what they can eat, eating macroinverts and stuff in the bio. Anything else? Yes.
You finally get these fish home. What do you do to acclimate? Is it the same routine? Or?
So one of my main, I put in there at the beginning, one of the things you need is testing equipment. You want to test the water where you're getting it from. And one of the things that I do now, and we learned this the hard way, was keep an original water sample from the collection location, sterile and separate from everything else. So you want to try to match as close as you can, at least on GH, pH, TDS, whatever terminology you want to use. You just want to try to match what they're at. We actually, it's killing me, because that was the whole thing with that Episto, was we were hardening the water with calcium, and the calcium was making the eggs infertile. So we actually had to switch up to a magnesium hardening of the water to get them to breed. But yeah, so that's why you want to keep a pure water sample, is do your basic stuff to match when you get home. But then if you're running into any difficulties, actually send it off to the lab. The FAS, what's it called, Lou? What's the lab called for the fish farmers? Do you remember?
It's a tropical fish lab or something.
Yeah, they will, if you give them water sample, they will,
Ruskin, yeah.
yeah, Ruskin, they will run that, they will test that water and give you every mineral possible breakdown in there. And believe it or not, that does matter, because the whole thing about eggs when you're trying to breed is osmotic pressure, right? You know, how easy is that water moving freely between the membrane of the egg? If you get the osmotic pressure wrong, your eggs will never hatch, or you'll get a very depressed hatch rate. And then you actually will see some variation in your species by that. But that's me getting highly technical. Lou knows I can get technical, and I'm not here to do that. But yeah.
Two quick ones. What was the pH like where you found your pistos?
pH where we were finding pistos is almost dead neutral everywhere. Yeah, the water, if it's got a flow, it's going to be right around 7. But our TDS is almost always under 10. So at night you'll get a pH drop, and during the day you'll get a pH spike. So you are getting wide ranges in the pH. Now bear in mind, we're doing easy collecting, so we're all collecting creeks that readily feed the river that we're fishing on. So it keeps a flow. But anywhere that the water sits still, like let's say you're at a creek and it's got to a point. Actually, I posted the other day, people started saying, when we go collect, I'm like, hey, I've noticed this section of creek that's drying up. Who wants to go with me catch some mollies? Because it had gotten to a point where the water had stopped flowing and it started pooling. Once you get pooling, you will see a tank in your pH. And that's actually where you'll see like your discus spawning and stuff. Your discus and your discus aren't spawning in the main channel of the river. Your discus are spawning in pools that have dried up to the point where no water is flowing. And that's why you'll see them wanting to spawn at such a low pH.
What was the bottom like where you found porous? Was it sandy or granulate?
I have, well, so we have called cories over mud, detritus, sand, rock. They're over everywhere. It just depends on the species that you're referring to. A lot of the pygmy cories will tend to be over a detritus, and they're actually up in the water column and not on the bottom. It just depends on which species it is. When we caught I didn't have any of my night sanding stuff. When we go out sanding at night and catch cories, someone's always over a sandy bottom, and we will catch them by the thousands. So during the day, they will be in one habitat, and at night they will migrate into a different. It's important to do night collecting. If you don't go out collecting at night, you're missing out on a lot of potential species that you're going to catch. So was the hand up over here? Okay. No more?
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
All right, let's take about a 10-minute break. We're gonna have about a half an hour auction. I think I'm gonna shut down the live stream. I do want to show everybody on live who all's here. They haven't had a chance to see it, everybody. We got about 30 people here.
You're sitting at our feet, Lou.
Huh?
You're at our feet.
Oh, at your feet. I'm sorry. Here we go. Hi, Barb, right? Oh, that's great. Well, thank you. Yes, okay. Terrific. I don't know if I have a check. I might not. Let me look and see.
So it was his father's export business in Egypt, right? And his father died. Okay. And Lowell took over and tried to.
Well,
And then he was.
all right. Let me chat with you guys a little bit here.
Yeah, I want to say his father died.
Nice to have you all here. Thanks for coming in. We had about 45 people in during this talk. Great talk. I think I'm sure everybody enjoyed it. I'm going to sign off because we're just having a lot of trouble here right now. If I can, why can't I do anything? Oh dear. Huh.
Yeah, I walked in there and we walked in.
There we go. All right. Nice to be with you all. I'll be with EJ tomorrow night at 8:30, and then Sunday, Barry and I will be together. Thank you all for coming in. Thank you for being part of this. See you later in the week. Bye for now.